Ulauda Equiano wrote of a slave being, quote, half hanged and then burnt for attempting to poison a cruel overseer, end quote. And Harriet Jacobs wrote of a slave being tortured via slowly dripping melting pork fat onto him from a fire above.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
That is so fucked up. It's fucked up. So fucked up. It is just so damn fucked up. That's fucked up.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is That's So Fucked Up, a podcast about cults, murder, and other generally fucked up stuff. We're your hosts. I'm Ashley Richards.
And I'm Cam Dexter.
And I'm your audio engineer, Evette.
Whoop, whoop.
All right, you guys. Jeez, happy holidays.
Jeez.
It's the 17th.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
Are you in the spirit? Cam is maybe in the spirit. She fucking yelled at somebody about her tree the other day, but she has a tree, so we'll give you
now
like
the
half
tree is
credit
here.
for being in the spirit.
The tree is here. The wreath is here. The Christmas lights are up. The candles are here. Although they didn't tell me that the glitter is like just like loose. So like the goose is loose.
You got glitter on your tree?
Glitter. No, I got glitter candles.
Oh,
see these gold glitter candles?
Yeah, well, obviously glitter.
I didn't know they were
going to
be
everywhere.
Like,
yeah,
I didn't.
It's going to look like there's been a stripper in your apartment for like weeks.
Maybe there has been. I wish.
Anyway, well, you guys,
happy
if you're
holidays
celebrating
to me.
Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, what are the other fucking, if you're not celebrating,
all the
if you're
things.
like
whatever you're doing, we're happy about it.
If you're just enjoying the festivities, like, fuck yeah, what's up?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's up? That's all.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. A couple things before we start. As always, please remember to play bingo with us for a chance to win a free month of Patreon. You can head over to our website, tsfuthepodcast.com, to download Murder Bingo today. Definitely have a bit of a heavier episode, but don't worry because we got, I guess the ones that are coming up in the future are a little more lighthearted.
We have like a little bit of chomp chomp.
It's a mixed.
A little bit of like
conspiracy theory, cult,
chickadee chackadee, you know?
Yeah, we got some fun stuff coming up. We got some fun stuff coming up for you guys. So, this one's a little bit heavy, but it's a good one.
But that's how it goes sometimes, you know? And like we have to talk about history and we got to talk about everything. And this fucking happened. And if you're a fan of American Horror Story, like Cam and I, then you will likely recognize this character from season 3, Coven, because today we're talking about the fucking awful, awful, awful Delphine-lalaurie. And you guys remember, we're not journalists or mental health professionals. Any diagnoses that we make are purely conjecture. And, you know, like when shit happens in the 1800s, records are a little spotty and we do our best to tell the story as accurately as possible. But, you know, there's some pretty differing accounts out there. So just know that. And if you guys want to check out my sources, you can do that as always on the blog. Okay, guys. So I'm going to get into the story.
You're taking us down to New Orleans, huh?
Yeah, baby. I'm doing it Cam style. We got a cinematic opening here. Okay.
I'm ready.
Down in New Orleans. Nolans. Yeah. On April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out at 1140 Royal Street in New Orleans, Louisiana. When police and fire marshals arrived, they found a 70-year-old woman in the kitchen where the fire had started, chained to the stove by her ankle with a deep wound in her head.
Ugh.
They noticed that Delphine-lalaurie, the plantation owner, was weirdly trying to rescue her jewels and furs without the help of her slaves. When Judge Jean-Francois Canonge, French names are hard, asked for the keys to the slave quarters, Delphine's husband Louis told him to mind his own goddamn business and that, quote, some people had better stay at home rather than come to others' houses to dictate laws and meddle with other people's business. I don't think judges are supposed to go to people's houses to dictate laws. I don't know if they're allowed to do that in the home, but judges' jobs are kind of to dictate laws. So shut up, you asshole, right?
Yeah, I think if I heard that, I'd be like, okay, definitely going to need to get behind that door because obviously you're hiding something.
Right. So he's like, fuck you, I'm a judge. And he ordered that the doors be broken down.
Okay.
When the mob that had accumulated broke down the doors, what they found inside horrified them. The slaves inside were emaciated, mutilated, and chained. They had bloody welts from being flayed with a whip, were bound in painful and restrictive postures, and had spiked iron collars on that kept their heads in one position and would poke them if they tried to move or sleep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's fucking atrocious. Papers claimed that there was an old man with scars all down his body and maggots in his head, and a boy who had been chained to the walls for 5 months and nearly starved. The next day's newspaper said that among others found were, quote, 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck with their limbs stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. They had been confined for several months in the situation from which they had thus been providentially rescued, and had merely been kept in existence to prolong their suffering and to make them taste all that the most refined cruelty could inflict, end quote. Yowza.
Wow.
The old woman they yeah, Cam, sorry. I feel like you were going to say something.
No, it's just, honestly, it's, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to, I feel like it's difficult to talk about race. I'm a white person, and when I hear this kind of stuff, it's just absolutely unbelievable how we treat each other. So it, like you said, it's such an ugly chapter in our history, and it's crazy that, 400 years later or whatever, we've made progress, but it always astounds me how slow human progress is. And I sometimes even wonder, what real progression looks like for the human race, because sometimes it seems like we're sort of just tumbling around in these cycles as opposed to moving forward in any linear way,
Oh, for sure. And I mean, slavery, the 13th Amendment wasn't ratified until 1865, which essentially abolished slavery. So that was less than 200 years ago.
Yeah.
This is not that distant, the past.
Mm-hmm.
Which, and you're right, as a white person, it is hard to talk about race. But I think that's why it's important, because we shouldn't shy away from the topic because it's kind of uncomfortable and because we're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although I was going to do this story about a year and a half ago, and as I was starting to look into it, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is great timing. So I'm going to hold off on this story for now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But one of our listeners recently wrote in and requested it. And I just think it's an important story because, well, you'll hear why.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So the old woman they found chained to the stove in the kitchen later said that she had started the fire in a suicide attempt because she was scared of getting punished. She said that slaves who went to the uppermost room never came back. So, yeah, like I said, this is the story of Madame Delphine-lalaurie. So, Marie Delphine McCarty was born in New Orleans, Spanish Louisiana, on March 17th, 1787, to a very wealthy and powerful family. Her father, Louis Barthélemy de McCartney, had a light-skinned mistress named Sophie Musante, and some think that may have attributed to her cruelty towards Black people. But also, the attitudes and practices of her family were deeply ingrained with racism and slavery. They lived in constant fear about the Haitian Revolt, a slave revolt to the south in Saint-Domingue that happened from 1791 to 1804 that eventually led to the creation of the Republic of Haiti. They were like one of the only slave colonies that succeeded in overtaking and becoming a free colony of previously owned enslaved men and women.
Huh, okay.
So it's said that Delphine's uncle was murdered in 1771 by his own slaves, and that the revolt had inspired the Mina conspiracy, the Point Coup conspiracy, and the German Coast uprising, all causing slave owners to punish slaves extremely harshly in an attempt to scare them into compliance. In the Point Coup conspiracy, which happened on May 4th, 1795, 57 slaves and 3 local white men were put on trial in Point Coup after an attempted slave rebellion at the plantation of Julien de Leon-de-Poydras. People had long-ass fucking names back in the day, dude. The trial resulted in the hanging of 23 slaves and their decapitated heads being posted along the road, and 31 slaves sentenced to flogging and hard labor. The 1811 German Coast uprising was over the course of 2 days. At least 200 enslaved men marched 23 miles, burning 5 plantation houses, several sugar houses, and tons of crops along the way. A lot of them were caught, executed, and again decapitated. Author Daniel Rasmussen said, quote, "The forms of punishment were quite extreme. The 1811 revolt saw over 100 slaves beheaded. Their heads were put on poles stretching for 40 miles from the center of New Orleans out into the countryside. You'd see slaves' corpses from the rebellion dangling from the city gates." End quote. It's like some fucking, oh, you got Handmaid's Tale. This whole thing is literally like a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So at the age of 13, in 1800, Delphine marries Don Ramon de Lopez y Angulo, a high-ranking Spanish officer. On this video that I watched that otherwise was pretty good because it did like fact versus fiction, this guy goes, "Oh, she had a scandalous affair at the age of 13. I was like, "Oh, you mean she was like fucking raped?" And like,
Yeah,
sorry, you're a child when you're 13.
Not old enough to have a scandalous affair at 13.
No. Thank you.
Those things should not be in the same sentence.
Those aren't together. Yeah, exactly. And 4 years later, 17-year-old Delphine became pregnant, but Don Ramon died suddenly. Just a few days after his death, Delphine gave birth to their daughter, Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez y Angulo de la Candelaria.
Ugh, gosh.
Nicknamed Borquita.
That's cute.
Fitting. Adorable.
Gosh. Just call me Borquita. What is it?
Borquita.
Oh,
No, it's just like, ugh, really?
Oh, like Evette puts like the actual accent on it. We're like, Borquita. She's like, Borquita.
Yeah, Borquita.
It's like out of all that, you couldn't come up with anything, you know?
Cuter? Maybe just call her Marie.
I mean, anything.
Yeah. Anything but that. Oh, right. In 1808, Delphine married second husband, slave trader Jean Blanc, and they had 4 kids together. But Blanc also died 8 years later in 1816. So
interesting.
Right? It's like,
okay.
You're like a psycho and people are suddenly dying around you. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Was there any, I know this story is really old, but it seems like were there any of the familiar indicators of just horrible abuse or sexual abuse or?
No, I mean, besides the getting married at 13 thing, and then
right.
Yeah,
well, that is pretty bad. I mean,
that's pretty bad, but it's weird because actually, by all accounts, like when she was younger, she was quite courteous and nice. But also, psychopaths are great at putting on that face. Am I right?
Sure. Yes.
So 9 years after the death of Jean Blanc, 38-year-old Delphine marries third and final husband, Leonard Louis Nicholas Lalaurie. Lalaurie, I don't know. I heard it pronounced a bunch of different ways.
Okay.
So Louis, as he was called.
But she already has 4 children at this point, right? From her previous marriage?
And 1 from the first, so 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I'm not sure where all of them are. I guess some of them are, I don't know, actually, because, well, you'll hear. So, and when they first met, they had a baby together, scandalous, and married afterwards. Oh, and he was also a much younger doctor, also scandalous. Did I say that already?
He was much younger than Delphine.
Than she was, yeah.
Okay.
He was a much younger doctor, fresh off the boat from France. When I read that, I was like, is that racist to say? But in those terms, I don't think so, because he literally was fresh off the fucking boat from France, you know?
Okay.
So they first had a baby and married afterwards. And pretty quickly after they wed, they started bickering constantly and reportedly had a very unhappy marriage. 6 years into their blissful marriage, in 1831, she bought the lot at 1140 Royal Street, kind of just by herself, like managing it in her own name, which was pretty rare for a woman, like rare at the time for a woman to
own their own property.
Do anything.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
But it sounds like she basically did whatever the fuck she wanted. So she had a mansion built there the next year, and 2 of her daughters, as well as Louis, lived there. So this is in 1831, and she had her kids around like 1808. So I guess, yeah, quite a few of them would be grown enough to be out on their own.
Okay.
Especially if you got married at fucking 14 back in that time.
Yeah. Yes. Different times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that same year, 1932, Delphine petitioned for a separation from bed and board of her husband, claiming that he had, quote, treated her in such a manner as to render their living together unsupportable, end quote. And actually 3 of her kids from her marriage with Blanc supported the claims. So just kind of tuck that away as a little nugget, because it's kind of something I want to circle back to later.
Copy that.
Roger.
10-4.
10-4. Over and out. Not quite yet. Not quite yet. Actually, I think it's a good time to take a quick commercial break. But please do stay tuned, because we have a promo for our friends from Weird Distractions. It's a great show hosted by Alex and Christy. They are like us, you know, they're just a little wacky, and they kind of talk about whatever the fuck they want. So the topics are pretty varying, like ours. So if you like us, you'll probably dig them. So make sure to listen to their promo, and we'll be back.
Do you often find that you need a distraction from everyday life?
Do you like true crime, conspiracy theories, paranormal stories, and other weird, dark tales?
Well, tune in and turn up Weird Distractions Podcast, where we, your hosts, Christy
and Alex,
bring you a weird distraction to help you get through the work week.
Every Sunday morning, you can find our show on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Good Pods, and more.
So, grab a snack, get comfy,
and make sure to lock those doors. Need a distraction? We got you.
Okay, guys, and we're back. So let's dive back into this nightmare. So it seems that the separation from Louis was not permanent, though, because he was there, like I said, on the night of the fire in 1834, telling the judge to mind his own goddamn business while not wanting to turn over the keys. You know, the keys to the torture chamber. So the LaLauries were central figures in high society New Orleans, but rumors had long circulated that they were unusually cruel to their slaves. There was something called the Code Noir, or the Black Code, from the Spanish and French colonial days that ensured the bare minimum of human rights for enslaved people. It said that you couldn't mutilate or murder them. That's nice. But everything else is on the table. Just not mutilation and murder. And you couldn't separate 12-year-old or younger children from their parents. And I was like, huh. I mean, even we did that as recently as like a year or two ago, putting children in cages, separating like babies from their parents in this country. Remember?
Oh, talking about the border? Yeah, I'm pretty sure all that's still going on. Although I just heard that now Biden just sent like 700 migrants back. That's a whole nother can of worms. So. Oh,
that's a whole nother can of worms. Yeah, I'm just like, wow, even back then, though, they had a policy of not separating children 12 or younger from the parents.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, that goes to my point of, are we just spinning around in loops or, what
right. The saying goes, history repeats itself. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So residents filed complaints leading to investigations for cruelty to slaves in 1828, 1829, and 1832. And in 1829, they were charged with violating the Code Noir law. But there are no detailed records of these accounts, and basically no action was taken because the punishments likely didn't seem all that unusual at the time. Morrow Long went through the court records in the parish to see how many people were convicted of mistreating slaves during the time that the LaLauries lived in the Royal Street mansion, and found evidence that the courts eventually started backing off from enforcing laws that were designed to prevent mistreatment of slaves. So, like, they made these laws and they were like, I don't know, fuck it. Like, the laws were on the books, but the practice wasn't.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, it's like so much of this. Okay, well, here, like, I'm just thinking back to my Caribbean studies class when we learned it's money, like sugar became a thing in Europe. This is like very crash course. God, I'm not like an expert on fucking anything. But sugar became a big thing in Europe. That and slavery obviously has been going on for centuries. But from what I know is, maybe I should make sure I know what I'm talking about before I say this. But essentially, we started bringing slaves over from Europe because it was fueled by the sugar trade.
You mean from Africa?
Yes, from Africa. What did I say? Oh, to Europe. I'm sorry. Yes, from Africa over to Europe and then down through the Caribbean and then back up over to the Americas. So this sugar trade really fueled what we know in America as slavery because it was the sugar plantations that first needed this constant work.
Oh.
Because sugar is a really tricky...
So it didn't start with cotton?
No, sugar precedes the cotton. And I don't know why I started talking about this, but... Oh, money.
Well, you're talking about that it's money. Yeah.
So, yes.
You're buying and selling human beings. That's money,
Yes.
Human trafficking. Still a lot of that going on, too. Man, the world is really depressing.
I know this one's going to be
Which is why... No, it's okay. I ended it with something, like, really fun, which is... I know, like, how do you even do that? Are you guys playing bingo? Because Evette reminded us before the fucking shit started that we're bad at playing bingo.
But I don't have many.
Okay, well, she definitely didn't drive a van.
Right.
I don't have any either. Yeah, I mean, we'll probably not get it on this one, but we will play. Gosh darn it. So basically, the thought of the time is that these were slaves and not humans, or, barely so. And whites had the right to treat them how they wanted because they fucking owned them and they were white, and that was that. Nobody really questioned it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yes, while the things that she did were fucking atrocious, like, there are a lot of accounts in everywhere of this kind of shit happening. Ulauda Equiano wrote of a slave being, quote, half hanged and then burnt for attempting to poison a cruel overseer, end quote. And Harriet Jacobs wrote of a slave being tortured via slowly dripping melting pork fat onto him from a fire above.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Like, this is what they did back then. Like, I'm embarrassed to say as a fucking white person, but yeah.
Well, and it's a mass, again, it's another, I mean, I can't think of a worse case scenario as far as, okay, I guess we can start with the Native Americans. That's also a part of this history, but the mass hysteria where we're marginalizing a whole group of minorities. And what I say mass hysteria, I mean, it's like drinking the it's you grow up in a certain paradigm where certain things are just okay, and it's a learned behavior because if you grew up in the South, you were desensitized.
This shit was kind of the norm
to seeing other human beings treated like that, and it's a disturbing reality just to come to terms with. I mean, I don't understand it myself, and it's I don't know, I guess.
Well, it's just like today. It's so normal to see a person of color, especially getting shot or harassed or beaten down by police. And it's just like a normal day of the week. It's not even surprising anymore. And it's just terrible to see that and to honestly say that it's normal in our country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't watch the news. It's not because I don't care. I get my news like from my friends, actually, because a lot of, and my parents, people who do watch the news, but I'm like, oh my God, this place is the worst. We're all fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know, and I think that's like the responsibility or the balance that everybody is trying to maintain, especially these days when I can only speak from my own experience. There's just been a lot going on, whether it's externally or internally. And it's hard to find a balance of how do I keep a finger on the pulse of the important issues of today and also take care of myself, because it does get overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Not to get on another tangent, but there was a time, especially where with all the violence, the police brutality we were seeing on the news, plus COVID, I was like watching so much CNN. I was like in a complete... I was a total fucking wreck.
Oh, dude, your fucking system was probably in like adrenal overload or something.
And not only is it on the TV, it's on your phone. Like everyone's posting about it and stuff. So it's like where you can't even, escape that on your phone. It's just everywhere.
Yeah, and I think to bring it back to the topic here, that's something. Okay, I don't obviously. Again, I am not a person of color, but it's inescapable for them, right? This has been a reality for Black people in America for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's not just one day of being overwhelmed. It's generation after generation after generation. And, the other thing that I can't imagine would be this pressure sometimes from white people to, it's like, oh, are you a person of color? Are you a minority? Like, let me hear you speak on behalf of everyone, like your entire race or your entire ethnicity. And I can't imagine how tiring that would get, because that's just another form of us being like, oh, can you explain this to me?
Right. Instead of like doing our own research.
Can you do something for me? What can you do for the majority?
Well, it's our job to go learn about history and learn about what's going on our own. We got to do our own research, which actually makes me happy that we're doing this episode, because this is our history. So according to Harriet Martineau, an English author who went to investigate this case in 1836, said that residents claimed that, quote, Madame Lallaurie's slaves looked singularly haggard and wretched. So at this point, this is where I want to bring up, and none of this explaining is defending her actions or anything, it's just like, here's some food for thought. So why not their slaves, her and Louis? Like, didn't they both own the slaves? French slave owners were known to be particularly cruel. She had filed that petition that said that he was like unbearable to live with or whatever. An account of her cruelty towards slaves really didn't start until she married Louis. So with all that, it's just where I don't know. I just kind of feel like, is this one of those cases in history where they put all the blame on the woman and like he just gets off scot-free? He obviously knew what was going on. He didn't want to allow them to go into the quote slave quarters or the fucking torture dungeon, like to save them.
I think this is such an extreme case that there's no way they aren't both culpable. There's no way that one person, or you know what? I don't know, but my guess would be that it's very, very difficult to abuse so many people to this extent for this long without the other person.
Oh, he knew.
Yes. Yeah. So fuck them both. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, but you never hear his name. It's just kind of like, oh, interesting. You only hear the woman's name,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it is said that French slave owners were known to be particularly cruel. So I don't see how he's like not culpable in this as well. But the story is all about like her. But anywho, that's just, something to think about. So funeral registers between 1830 and 1834 documented the death of 12 slaves at the Royal Street Mansion. So it was said that this could have easily been from infectious diseases, which would make sense because these people were obviously living in awful conditions and whatever. Yep. But I would also surmise that a lot of people died from infections because, whipping and essentially flaying people was so common that you would just have these gaping wounds that I assume would become infected. I assume that would kill a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a doctor, but
absolutely.
Doesn't sound good.
I mean, from what I understand, like a quote, this is disgusting to talk about because it's human lives, but a high turnover rate was extremely common, right?
Oh, for slaves.
Yes, yeah. And by high turnover rate, I mean that, people are dying and
so they need fresh ones all the time.
Yeah.
That's fucking disgusting. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we get back, I will talk about some of those deaths and then continue on to the rumors about LaLaurie's mistreatment of her slaves. We'll be right back. Patrons, enjoy your non-commercial. Okay, gang, we back. So, included this fucking, I had to reread the dates a few times because I was like, how is that? So included in the 12 recorded deaths were Bon, a 30-year-old cook and laundress, and her 4 children, Juliet, 13, Florence, 10, Jules, 6, and Leontine, 2. I just, because I had first read that, the funeral registers documented the death of 12 slaves. And then I saw who some of those, quote, slaves were. And I was like, how are you a fucking 2-year-old slave? I don't know. It just made me sick,
Wow.
Ugh. Yeah.
Or a 6-year-old slave. Or And how did her and all of her children die?
Yeah, of course.
Coincidence. And Bon had been described in her sale to LaLaurie as a chronic runaway. So, I don't know if she had tried to run away or if Delphine just had an immediate disdain for her because she had that habit in the past.
Yep.
But it sounds to me like she murdered all of them.
Yes, I would agree.
You're on board with that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So she did free 2 slaves, John Louis in 1819 and De Vince in 1832. But the first was in the will of her second husband, Blanc, and the second might have just been a part of a local social conventions saying that older slaves with a good record should be freed. That's nice. That's nice of them.
Yeah. How
Yeah, but
progressive.
right? Oh, yeah.
Ew.
But it didn't sound like either of them she gave up just because, like, she felt like it was the right thing to do at all.
Okay.
So, like I said, rumors about Delphine's mistreatment of her slaves were widespread, and a lawyer was sent to remind her of the laws for the upkeep of slaves. But during his visit, he apparently found no evidence of mistreatment. Wild!
Ugh.
But after the lawyer's visit, Delphine was seen by neighbors chasing an 8 to 12-year-old girl, saw different accounts, named Leah. They saw her chasing Leah around with a whip in broad daylight. Leah had apparently hit a snag while brushing Delphine's hair, sending her into a rage. And Leah climbed to the roof to try to escape the whipping that was inevitably coming from Delphine, and she fell off the roof and died.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, so this event led to an investigation of the Lalauries, where they were found guilty of illegal cruelty and forced to forfeit 9 slaves and pay a $300 fine. And they were probably forced to hand down that judgment because she had also been seen burying Leah's mangled corpse in the backyard. So they're like, oh, okay, we got to do something about this.
Gosh.
It's not a good look
Ugh.
if we don't.
Wow.
And you're like, oh, cool. Well, at least those 9 slaves got away from her, right?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is like a fucking nightmare. Her relatives bought the slaves
Are you kidding
and
me?
sold them back to her.
Oh.
And authorities looked the other way.
Oh my gosh.
And she would have blamed that or taken it out on them for being taken away
Yeah.
in the first place, like.
Mm-hmm. Oh man.
Wow.
Yeah. And apparently if her daughters tried to feed or unchain any of the slaves, she would beat them like a psycho. Just like, don't you dare treat them like humans. So, like I said at the top of the show, the fateful fire happens on April 10th, 1834. And what the crowd found inside horrified them. Whether the treatment was typical or not, a mob of approximately 4,000 people descended on the mansion, looting and pillaging in rage. But some historians have shed doubt on the alleged rage of the crowd, given the long circulating rumors of her cruelty and the normalcy of such atrocities at the time.
Mm-hmm.
According to Rasmussen, the author I mentioned earlier, these were pretty normal forms of restraint on the plantations outside of New Orleans, where rural plantation owners were still much more fearful of revolts. Rasmussen says, quote, "They would tie your hands to 4 stakes, then whip you with a cat o' 9 tails, and that would leave you bleeding and barely able to move. They also had an iron masks to put around your head so you couldn't eat. And they had collars with spikes facing inwards so the slaves couldn't sleep without getting spikes stuck in their necks. Those were common forms of punishment in Louisiana during this time period. They believed that without the threat of tremendous violence, slaves wouldn't stay slaves."
Well, that is grim.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. It is so fucked up.
Right.
Which is why it's perfect for the show.
Yep.
So that is true, but also New Orleans was at this time now established and well under control. So people had started to lose some fear of slaves and began distancing themselves from the formally accepted, unusually cruel treatment of them. So like basically at this point, it was like people out in the country who were still being this barbaric, not necessarily so much. Like the people in the cities were more like refined and progressive, and they were moving towards like like less brutal torture, I guess. Like still torture, but like just not this.
Okay.
So I do think that the mob was like actually angry because, or I don't know, maybe that's just hopeful thinking that like they had like grown some sort of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so. So, this is awesome. In the midst of the chaos, the family escaped. They took a coach to the waterfront and traveled by schooner to Mobile, Alabama, and then to New York, where they departed for Paris. Correspondence from her children said that she lived a luxurious but quiet and harmless life in Paris from then on, and apparently wasn't any longer a rageful and violent person.
Okay.
I question that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel some doubt about that account. Also, though, and I thought this was interesting if it were true, they said that she didn't understand why she had been driven out of New Orleans, apparently unaware of the implications of her gruesome actions.
Yeah, so that's why I don't believe that she could, like, if you don't know what you've done wrong, how can you
stop?
How can you suddenly improve? Yeah, that makes no
very
sense.
Good point. She's like, what did I even do? Like, what's everybody so pissed about?
Right.
I thought, is this not what like everybody's doing? Like, did somebody have a party and not invite me? You know, like, did somebody not give me the memo? Like, no, bitch, you're a psycho. So she died in 1849 in France at the age of 62, and by then Louis had abandoned the family. The mansion was destroyed by the fire that I said that, you know, the 70-year-old fucking slave woman had set in order to kill herself because she'd rather die by fire while chained to a stove than go up to the uppermost room that people didn't come back from. So if that's your better option of two, that's pretty fucked.
Wow.
Yeah. So this I don't fucking get. The mansion was destroyed by the fire and ransacking, but was rebuilt in 1838. Like, why? Why rebuild that? Do you guys get that? Like at all?
No, that's really surprising actually that they would do that.
Wouldn't you want to forget that chapter of your history or like hide it or
I think that's completely bizarre.
And they rebuilt it to look the same, which and then they used it for a public high school, a conservatory of music, an apartment building, a refuge for young delinquents, a bar, a furniture store, and a luxury apartment building. It's very bizarre. Yeah.
I don't get it.
It's like, no, I don't. It's super beyond me. Yeah. So it's believed that the house is haunted, and local legends say that no one has owned it for longer than 5 years. And I mean, obviously it was a bunch of different things over the years, but I don't know if 5-year max is true. Which I don't think it is, because New Orleans tours are notorious for going with gorier, untrue versions of the story, which I think is fucking lame. Like, why not give people the real history? Like, so, you know, it's because people like things super gory, but it's pretty fucking fucked up and gory by itself. But a lot of the things, rumors that have been tossed around over the years are that there were piles of corpses, organs, and limbs, that there were slaves pinned to tables, a girl crammed in a 3x3 cage, live bodies with their eyes gouged, fingernails torn out, ears hanging by shreds of skin, or their mouths filled with feces and sewn shut. It's also been claimed that there was one woman whose skin had been peeled off in spirals to make her look like a caterpillar, another with her bones broken and reset so that she looked like a crab, looked like and had to walk like a crab. And I don't know if it's like upside down like the fucking Exorcist, but either way, I mean, ugh. And one more whose intestines had been torn out and knotted around the waist. So, like, none of that has been substantiated. I think a lot of that stuff actually was shown in American Horror Story.
Okay.
But regardless, even if it wasn't stuff quite this atrocious, she was obviously a fucking monster. But, you know, like I said, it's not to diminish her actions or to, like, let her off the hook or whatever. But it's like you said, Cam, she was a product of her family who was super afraid of slaves and very violent towards them. And she grew up in a time and place where this shit was the norm. And she was possibly under the influence of Louis, who may have been, you know, particularly cruel to slaves as well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just in trying to understand, like, where her fucking mindset came from.
Ugh. I mean, you know, unfortunately with her, though, I think that we're not just dealing with, I definitely think it's a cop-out to say it's just the product of environment. Because
oh, absolutely.
I mean, like, with her, we're obviously dealing with a complete psychopath who has absolutely zero empathy for other people, even if a quarter of these things are true. Even if, I don't know, like, my pinky finger amount of this fucking bullshit is true. Like, this person is an absolute monster. No,
yeah, I agree. She's definitely a fucking psychopath. I just think that those are some of probably the things that influenced her to be a psycho in the way that she was.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so that was pretty depressing. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
So now we're going to end the story on a lighter note, because when I found this little tidbit, I was like, okay, this needs to be talked about. So in 2007, actor Nicolas Cage bought the mansion for $3.45 million.
Okay.
Why? I don't know. Some have said that he only stayed in it for one night because it was so scary. But he was one to prove the legend that no one has owned it for more than 5 years because it was listed for auction just 2 years later as a result of foreclosure. Few fun facts about Nicolas Cage. He's listed as one of the highest paid actors of all time by Forbes, and he was said to have made $40 million in 2009 alone. Besides Delphine-lalaurie mansion, some other notable purchase of his are a 9-foot-tall pyramid tombstone engraved with Ombi ab uno, Latin for everything from one, in a New Orleans cemetery, shrunken pygmy heads, a 67 million-year-old Tarbosaurus skull, valued at over $300,000, that he actually outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for.
Oh boy.
A shark, a crocodile, 2 albino king cobra snakes, and an octopus that reportedly cost $150,000, but supposedly helped him to be a better actor.
My octopus teacher.
Wait.
Right?
Wait,
Did you see that?
Isn't that a real movie?
Yeah, that's an excellent documentary.
Is it about Nicolas Cage and his octopus?
No.
Oh. He also had an octopus teacher.
Yeah.
He also bought the Shah of Iran's Lamborghini, 2 Bahamian islands, 2 European castles, and a bunch more shit, but I think that's enough.
Sounds like a spending problem to me. Nick, you know, there's Debtors Anonymous, buddy. It's okay.
Hey, 12-step programs can really work, although they can be pretty culty too. We're not going to lie.
Oh, yeah.
When I found out that he bought the house, I found an article that talked about the other stuff that he bought, and I was just like, what in the actual fuck? So I thought, since this was such a downer of an episode, it might be fun to end off with that little list.
rattle off some Nick Cage accoutrements. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so guys, make sure to follow us on social media at tsfuthepodcast.com. No, social media is just at TSFU the podcast. If you want, chances for cool giveaways and you want to know when we're doing our next IG Live with Brianna Fox, which will be happening, again, sometime in the near future if you missed it. So follow us and find links to all of our merch and sources, social media, bingo, Patreon, all that good stuff at our website, tsfuthepodcast.com.
And you guys, please do, if you have them, keep sending your listener stories so that they can be featured in our upcoming listener-sode. We love hearing the kind of fucked up scenarios that some of our listeners get themselves in. So if you have a fucked up story, please send it our way. And as always, we are just so glad for all our listeners out there. The most important thing is that you guys are listening. We're so happy that you are and that you do. And
you guys deck our halls every day.
That's correct. And you guys, please stay safe over these holidays. Have fun. Do your thing.
Take it easy on the eggnog.
Tell somebody you love them.
Careful with that dreidel. Don't get too crazy with the menorahs, everybody. Settle down, but have fun. We love you guys. And remember, it's not a cult. It's just a podcast.
But really, this Madame lady, if there is a hell, she's fucking roasting in it. And happy holidays.
Bum 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 bum. That's fucked up. So fucked up. Can't you see? It's just really fucked. That's fucked up.